Kira stood in front of the tall mirror in her room. Her hands shook as she touched the white fabric of her wedding dress. The material felt cold against her skin. She could see the soft blue glow of her skin patterns flickering nervously. Among her people, the Asherin, these patterns showed how someone felt. Right now, hers showed fear. "You look beautiful, daughter," her father said from the doorway. Ambassador Torin walked into the room. His own patterns were steady and calm, but Kira knew him well enough to sense the worry he tried to hide. "I don't want to do this," Kira whispered. Her voice broke. "Please, father, don't make me marry him." Torin's face grew sad. He reached out and held her shoulders gently. "I wish I could change this. I truly do. But the council has decided. This marriage will show unity between our people and the humans. It will help keep peace. Peace." Kira turned to face him. Tears filled her eyes. "The humans are monsters. Everyone knows what they did during the war. They killed without mercy. They destroyed entire settlements. And you want me to marry one of them? Not all humans are the same, Kira. Just like not all Asharin think the same way." "His name is Jake Morrison," Kira said bitterly. She had spent the last week reading everything she could find about him. He was a soldier. He led attacks. He killed people, father. There was a mission where his team destroyed a building. There were families inside, children. Torin looked down. War makes people do terrible things. Things they would never do in peace. And now I have to live with him, share a home with him, pretend to be his wife. Kira's voice grew louder. What if he hurts me? What if the monster I read about is who he really is? The reports say he is a good man now. He works as an engineer. He helps rebuild colonies. The human government would not choose someone dangerous for this program. Kira laughed, but there was no happiness in it. The human government. The same one that started the war? That government? Her father had no answer for that. He simply pulled her into a hug. "I will be watching. If anything happens, if you are in any danger, I will find a way to get you out. I promise you this." The promise felt empty, but Kira held on to her father anyway. She breathed in his familiar scent, trying to remember what safety felt like. Soon she would be living with a stranger. A human stranger. Someone from a species known for violence and rage. The ceremony happened 3 hours later. Kira walked through the grand hall of the Coalition's main station, Harmony Point. Thousands of beings from different species filled the room. Cameras floated everywhere, recording every moment. This wedding would be broadcast across all Coalition space. It was meant to show that different species could come together, that love could cross any border, but Kira felt no love, only fear. She saw him waiting at the end of the long walkway. Jake Morrison stood tall, wearing a formal suit from Earth. He had dark hair cut short and a strong face with sharp features. His eyes were brown and they looked tired. He didn't smile as she approached. He simply watched her with an expression she couldn't read. Kira's empathic abilities let her sense emotions from other beings. It was a gift all Asherin had. As she got closer to Jake, she tried to feel what he was feeling. But humans were different from other species. Their emotions were locked away behind thick walls. She could only sense the faintest hint of what was inside him. Resignation, duty, and something else. Something buried deep that felt like old pain. That hidden pain scared her more than anything. What had caused it? What had he done to earn such deep sadness? They stood face to face. An official from the Coalition Council began speaking words about unity and hope in the future. Kira barely heard any of it. She kept looking at Jake's hands. They were large and scarred. Hands that had held weapons. Hands that had built machines of war. "Do you, Kira Velshar, accept this union?" the official asked. Kira hesitated. Every part of her wanted to say no, to run, to escape. But she thought of her father's political enemies. She thought of how they had chosen her specifically for this marriage to embarrass her family. She thought of the treaty that depended on marriages like this. If she refused, what would happen to the fragile peace? "I accept," she said. Her voice sounded small. "Do you, Jake Morrison, accept this union?" "I accept." His voice was deep and quiet. He didn't look happy. He didn't look sad. He just looked resigned to his fate like she was. "Then by the power granted to me by the Galactic Coalition Council, I declare you bound in matrimonial union. May your joining bring prosperity to both your peoples." Polite applause filled the hall. Jake reached out his hand toward her. Kira stared at it for a moment. Then, knowing everyone was watching, she placed her smaller hand in his. His skin was warm. His grip was gentle, much gentler than she expected. But she still felt afraid. They walked together out of the hall as husband and wife. The crowd cheered. Music played. It all felt like a strange dream. Kira wanted to wake up and find herself back home, before any of this happened. A transport ship took them to their new home, a residential unit on Harmony Point Station. The unit was large, with separate bedrooms and a common area. Everything looked new and clean. It was designed to be comfortable for both species. There were places for Jake's Earth furniture and spaces decorated in Asheran style for Kira. But it didn't feel like home. It felt like a cage. "Your room is on the left," Jake said. They were the first words he had spoken directly to her. "Mine is on the right. The kitchen and living area are shared. I'll try to stay out of your way." Kira just nodded. She didn't trust herself to speak. Jake continued, "I know you don't want to be here. I can see that. I'm not happy about this either. But we're stuck with each other now. I won't hurt you. I won't bother you. Just try to tolerate me and I'll do the same for you." He turned and walked to his room. The door closed behind him with a soft sound. Kira stood alone in the common area. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling very cold despite the station's comfortable temperature. She went to her own room and locked the door. Only then did she allow herself to cry. She cried for her freedom. She cried for her future. She cried because she was trapped in a marriage with a man she feared, a human, a soldier, someone who might be dangerous. As she lay in her bed that first night, Kira could sense Jake in the other room through the walls. His emotions were still mostly hidden from her, but she could feel that tight control he kept over himself. To her, that control felt like a predator waiting to strike. She imagined him lying awake, plotting, thinking about what he could do now that she was trapped here with him. She didn't know that in his room, Jake was also lying awake, but he wasn't plotting. He was looking at an old photograph of his best friend Ryan, who had died in the war. He was thinking about how he had been given a second chance at life when so many others hadn't. He was thinking about how this scared young woman in the next room had been forced to marry him, and how terrible that must feel for her. He was thinking about how to make this easier for both of them, but Kira didn't know any of that. She only knew her fear, and as she finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, she wondered how long she would have to live with this human before something terrible happened. The first week passed slowly. Kira stayed in her room most of the time. She only came out when she was sure Jake wasn't in the common areas. She learned his schedule quickly. He left early every morning for work at the engineering bay.
He came back in the evening, made himself dinner, and went to his room.
On the surface, it seemed like a simple routine. But to Kira, every moment felt like walking on broken glass. She heard him moving around the apartment. His footsteps were heavy but careful. Sometimes she heard him working on something, the sound of tools clicking and whirring. Once she heard music playing from his room, a sad melody with a woman singing in a language Kira didn't understand. They barely spoke. When they passed each other in the hallway, Jake would nod and move aside to give her space. He never tried to start conversations. He never asked her questions. He simply existed in the same space as her, like a ghost. Kira told herself this was good. This was what she wanted: distance, safety. But something about his silence bothered her in ways she couldn't explain. She kept waiting for him to show his true nature. To get angry, to demand things from her, to be the monster she expected. But he never did. He just remained quiet and distant. On the 8th day, Kira ventured into the common area while Jake was still home. She needed to use the kitchen, and she was tired of eating packaged food in her room. She thought he was in his bedroom, so she felt safe enough to make herself a proper meal. She was wrong. Jake sat in the living area, bent over a small table. He was so focused on his work that he hadn't heard her come out. Kira froze, considering whether to retreat back to her room. But curiosity got the better of her. She watched him from the kitchen area, trying to stay quiet. He was building something. Small pieces of material lay spread across the table. His large hands worked with surprising gentleness, fitting tiny parts together with careful precision. After several minutes, Kira realized what he was making. It was a model ship. Not a warship, but an old sailing vessel from Earth's history with tall masts and detailed sails. She must have made a sound because Jake suddenly looked up. His brown eyes met hers. For a moment, neither of them moved. "Sorry," Jake said. He started gathering his materials. "I didn't know you were out here. I'll go back to my room." "No," Kira said quickly. The word surprised her as much as it seemed to surprise him. "You don't have to leave. I just came to make food." Jake nodded slowly. He didn't continue packing up his model, but he didn't go back to working on it either. He just sat there, looking uncomfortable. Kira turned to the kitchen and started preparing a simple meal. Her hands trembled slightly as she cut vegetables. She could feel Jake's presence behind her, even though he wasn't looking at her. The weight of the silence pressed down on both of them. "What are you building?" The question came out before Kira could stop herself. Jake seemed surprised that she had spoken. "It's a clipper ship. From Earth, 19th century. They were fast vessels used for trade across oceans. Why do you build them?" There was a long pause. "It keeps my hands busy. Helps me think about something other than—" He trailed off. "Other than what?" Another pause. "Other than the war." Kira's hand stopped moving. She didn't turn around. "Do you think about it often?" "Every day." His voice was quiet. "Some things you can't forget no matter how hard you try." She wanted to ask more. She wanted to ask about the building he destroyed, about the people who died, about whether he felt guilty, but she couldn't make the words come out. Instead, she finished preparing her meal in silence. When she turned around with her plate, she saw that Jake had gone back to working on his model. His focus was complete, like nothing else existed except the tiny ship taking shape in his hands. Kira carried her food to her room without saying anything else. But that night she lay in bed thinking about what he said. Every day. He thought about the war every day. The tight control she sensed from him. The walls around his emotions, maybe they weren't holding back violence. Maybe they were holding back pain. The next day, something happened that changed everything. Kira went to the station's observation deck in the afternoon. It was a large room with transparent walls that showed the stars outside. She often went there because it reminded her of home. The Asharan homeworld had 3 moons, and her people loved to watch the night sky. She found a quiet corner and sat down, letting herself relax for the first time in days. But after a while, she heard footsteps. Someone else had entered the deck. Kira looked over and saw Jake. He hadn't noticed her. He walked to the far side of the deck and stood at the window, staring out at the stars. His shoulders were tense. Kira stayed quiet, watching him. She knew she should leave, give him privacy, but something made her stay. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A photograph. He held it carefully, like it might break. As Kira watched, his shoulders began to shake. Not violently, but in the way of someone trying very hard not to cry. Through her empathic sense, Kira suddenly felt a wave of emotion from him. It was so strong it nearly knocked the breath out of her. Grief. Deep, terrible grief that felt like it had no bottom. Pain so profound that it made her own eyes water. This was what he kept locked away. This was what the walls around his emotions were holding back. Not rage, not violence, just sadness so heavy it could crush a person. Kira stood up without thinking. The movement caught Jake's attention. He turned and saw her there. For a brief moment, his face showed everything he felt. Then, like a door slamming shut, his expression went neutral again. He quickly put the photograph back in his pocket. "Sorry," he said. "I didn't know anyone was here." He walked past her quickly, heading for the exit. Kira wanted to say something, to tell him he didn't need to leave. But the words stuck in her throat. By the time she found her voice, he was already gone. That night, Kira couldn't stop thinking about what she had witnessed. She had been so sure that Jake was dangerous, that his controlled demeanor hid something violent, but what she had felt from him was the opposite of violence. It was loss. It was the emotion of someone who had been broken by war, not someone who enjoyed it. She thought about the photograph he had been holding. Who was in it? A family member? A friend? Someone he lost? 2 days later, Kira had an accident in the kitchen. She was cutting fruit with a sharp knife when her hand slipped. The blade cut deep into her palm. Blood welled up immediately, bright against her pale blue skin. "Oh no," Kira gasped. She grabbed a towel and pressed it against the wound, but blood soaked through quickly. Pain shot up her arm. Before she could even call out, Jake appeared in the kitchen. She hadn't heard him come home. He must have just arrived and heard her gasp. "You're hurt," he said. There was no question in his voice, just a statement of fact. "It's fine," Kira said automatically, even as more blood dripped onto the floor. "I can handle it." Jake didn't listen. He was already moving to the bathroom, returning seconds later with a medical kit. "Let me see it." Kira hesitated. She didn't want him to touch her. But the wound was bleeding badly and she was starting to feel dizzy. Slowly, she held out her hand. Jake took it gently. His touch was careful as he unwrapped the towel and examined the cut. "It's deep but clean. I can close it with medical adhesive. It will hurt for a moment." He worked quickly and efficiently. His large hands, the same hands she had feared, were incredibly gentle. He cleaned the wound, applied the adhesive, and wrapped her hand in a bandage. The whole process took less than 5 minutes. "There," he said. "Keep it dry for 24 hours. Change the bandage tomorrow. It should heal completely in about a week." "Thank you," Kira whispered. Jake looked up at her. His brown eyes were kind, genuinely concerned. "Are you okay? You look pale." "I don't like blood," Kira admitted. To her surprise, Jake smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it transformed his face. "Sit down. I'll get you some water." Kira sat at the table while Jake brought her water and cleaned up the blood on the floor. He didn't make her feel foolish for being squeamish. He didn't complain about having to help her. He just took care of everything quietly. "You're good at this," Kira said. "Taking care of injuries." Jake's smile faded. "I had a lot of practice during the war. Field medicine was required training for all soldiers." "Did you?" Kira swallowed hard. "Did you lose many friends?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. He stood with his back to her, still cleaning the counter. "Too many. Good people. Better than me. I'm sorry, don't be. You had nothing to do with it." He turned to face her.
"Kira, I know you're afraid of me."
"I understand why. My military record isn't clean. I did things in the war that I'm not proud of, things I wish I could take back. But I want you to know that I would never hurt you. Not ever, you're safe here." Kira stared at him. She reached out with her empathic sense, trying to feel if he was lying. But all she felt was sincerity. He meant what he said. He truly believed it. "The building," Kira said quietly. "The one your team destroyed. The mission report said there were civilians inside." Jake's face went pale. He gripped the edge of the counter. "Yes, there were. The intelligence was wrong. We didn't know until—" He stopped, unable to continue. "I'm sorry," Kira said again. "I shouldn't have brought it up." "No, you have a right to know who you're living with." Jake's voice was rough. "We thought it was a weapons facility. We were given maps, blueprints, everything pointed to it being a military target. But when we got inside, we realized the truth. We tried to evacuate everyone. My friend Ryan, he stayed behind to help get people out. The building collapsed before he could escape. The photograph. The grief she had sensed. Now it made sense. That's why you build the ships," Kira said softly. "To remember him?" Jake nodded. Ryan loved old sailing vessels. He used to talk about them all the time, said they represented a simpler time before wars were fought with bombs and lasers. Building the models helps me feel like he's still here somehow. Kira stood up. She walked over to where Jake stood. For the first time since the wedding, she looked at him without fear. "Thank you for telling me, and thank you for helping me today." "Of course." Jake looked surprised by her gratitude. That night, Kira did something she hadn't expected to do. She made a cup of tea, the way she had learned Earth people drank it. She walked quietly to Jake's door and left the cup there with a small note that read, "Thank you for helping me." When she went back to her room, her heart was beating fast. But for the first time since the wedding, it wasn't beating from fear. It was something else, something she couldn't quite name yet, something that felt almost like hope. Jake found the tea the next morning. Kira heard him open his door and stop. There was a long silence. Then she heard his footsteps going to the kitchen. When she finally emerged from her room an hour later, she found something waiting outside her door. A small book with a worn cover. The title read, Earth's Natural Wonders. There was no note, but Kira knew who had left it. She picked up the book and took it back to her room. The pages were filled with pictures of Earth's mountains, oceans, forests, and deserts. Someone had marked certain pages with small folded corners. Kira opened to one of these marked pages and found a picture of a place called the Northern Lights. Waves of green and blue light danced across a dark sky above snowy mountains. It looked magical. At the bottom of the page, someone had written in pen, "Reminded me of your skin patterns. Beautiful in the same way." Kira's fingers traced the words. Jake had written this. He had looked at these lights and thought of her. The idea made something warm bloom in her chest. Over the next week, small gifts appeared. Not expensive things, just small gestures. A blanket when the station's temperature dropped one night. A package of fruit from the station's market that came from a world near the Asherin homeworld. A music file loaded with Earth songs that Jake thought she might like. Kira responded in her own way. She learned what foods Jake liked and started leaving portions of her cooking for him to find. She noticed he drank coffee every morning, so she bought a better brand from the market. She left notes thanking him for the gifts, and the notes grew longer each time. They started eating meals together. It happened naturally, without planning. One evening, Kira was eating in the common area when Jake came home. Instead of taking his food to his room like usual, he asked if he could join her. Kira said yes. The first shared meal was quiet. They ate and made small comments about the station news. But it was a start. The next night, they did it again. And the night after that. Soon it became their routine. Conversations began, hesitant at first, like two people learning a new language. Jake told her about his work at the engineering bay. He was helping design better life support systems for the colony worlds. Kira told him about her childhood on the Asherin homeworld, about the crystal gardens and the singing towers that rang with music when the wind blew through them. "I'd like to see that someday," Jake said. "The singing towers. Maybe you will." Kira surprised herself by hoping it was true. One evening, Kira noticed Jake working on a new model at his table. This one was different from the sailing ships. It looked like a modern spacecraft. "What's that one?" she asked. Jake looked up, pleased that she was interested. "It's a colony transport. The kind that took the first human settlers to Mars. My grandmother was on one of these ships when she was young." "Is she still alive?" "No, she died a few years before the war started. But she used to tell me stories about the journey to Mars, how scared everyone was, how they didn't know if they'd survive. But they did it anyway because they wanted to build something new." Kira sat down across from him. "That's brave. That's humanity," Jake said with a small smile. "We're terrified half the time, but we do it anyway." He paused. "What about your people? Are the Asherin brave?" "We're different. We feel emotions more strongly than humans. So fear can be overwhelming. But we also feel courage more strongly. And love and hope. Everything is more intense for us." "That sounds exhausting," Kira laughed. It was the first time she had laughed in weeks. "It can be. That's why we learn to meditate and center ourselves. Otherwise, we'd be swept away by feeling." They talked late into the night. Kira learned that Jake loved music but couldn't sing. Jake learned that Kira had been part of a choir before politics consumed her life. He asked if she would sing for him sometime. She said maybe, not ready yet to share something so personal. The shift in their relationship became obvious one night during an emergency. Kira woke to alarms blaring through the station. Red lights flashed in her room. The station's automated voice announced a hull breach in Section 7, the residential area 2 levels below them. Kira stumbled out of her room, confused and frightened. Jake was already in the common area, pulling on a jacket and boots. "What's happening?" Kira asked. "Hull breach, stay here. The emergency systems will seal this section if needed." Jake was already heading for the door. "Where are you going?" "To help. I'm a trained engineer. They'll need everyone who knows their way around life support systems." "But it's dangerous." Jake turned back to look at her. His face was calm, determined. "People need help. I can't just sit here." Before Kira could argue, he was gone. She stood alone in the apartment, listening to the alarms. Fear gripped her, but not fear of Jake this time. Fear for him. What if something happened to him? What if the breach got worse? What if he was hurt? She tried to stay calm. She tried to meditate like she had been taught. But her mind kept showing her images of Jake in danger. She paced the apartment, watching the news feeds on the display screen. Reports came in slowly. The breach was large. Several residential units had lost atmosphere. Emergency crews were working to evacuate residents and seal the damaged sections. An hour passed, then 2. Kira couldn't sit still. She went to the door of the apartment, thinking about going to find Jake. But she didn't know where to look, and she would only get in the way. Finally, after 3 hours, Jake came back. His clothes were torn. His face was covered in soot. His arms had burns on them, angry red marks that made Kira gasp. "You're hurt." "It's not bad," Jake said, but he was clearly exhausted. He stumbled slightly as he walked. Kira rushed to him, helping him to the couch. "Sit down. Let me see your arms." She ran to get the medical kit, her hands shaking. When she came back, Jake was sitting with his eyes closed, breathing heavily. Kira knelt beside him and carefully examined his burns. "What happened?" she asked as she applied burn gel to his injuries. "There was a kid, a young Asharan girl. She was trapped behind some debris. Her mother was screaming, trying to get to her." Jake opened his eyes and looked at Kira. "I couldn't leave her there." "So you got hurt saving her?" "Some metal was superheated from the breach. I had to move it to reach her. Got burned in the process. But she's safe. That's what matters." Kira felt tears in her eyes, not from sadness, but from something else. Here was this man, this human she had been taught to fear, and he had risked himself to save a child, an Asharan child. Without hesitation. "You could have been killed," Kira whispered. "But I wasn't." Jake reached out with his uninjured hand and gently touched her face. It was the first time he had touched her since the wedding, besides when he treated her cut. "Hey, don't cry. I'm okay." "You're not okay. You're burned and exhausted, and you scared me." The words came out before Kira could stop them. Jake looked surprised. "You were scared for me?" Kira nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "I'm sorry. I didn't know you cared." "Of course I care." Kira finished wrapping his arms in bandages. "You're my husband." It was the first time either of them had said that word and meant it. Not as a political arrangement. Not as something forced on them. But as something real. Jake smiled. Even through his exhaustion and pain, he smiled. "You're my wife." They looked at each other for a long moment. Something had changed between them. Some wall had finally come down. "I need to tell you something," Kira said. She took a deep breath. "I've been wrong about you. From the beginning. I was so sure you were dangerous. That you would hurt me. But you're the kindest person I've ever met. You take care of me. You respect my space. You risk yourself for others without thinking twice. You're nothing like what I was told humans were." Jake's expression grew serious. "Kira, I need to be honest with you too. When they told me about this marriage, I thought it was just another duty. Another task to complete. I didn't expect to like you. I definitely didn't expect to." He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. "Didn't expect to what?" "To care about you. To look forward to seeing you every day. To want to know everything about you. To lie awake at night thinking about your laugh." He looked down. "I know this started as something forced on both of us. But somewhere along the way, it became real for me. You became real for me." Kira's heart was beating so fast she thought it might burst. Her skin patterns were glowing brightly, showing her emotional state. Among the Asharan, such bright glowing meant joy, excitement, and the beginning of love. "The book you gave me," Kira said softly. "The page about the northern lights. You wrote that they reminded you of me." "Yes, beautiful and impossible to look away from." I read that note over and over. I couldn't believe someone saw me that way. Jake reached out and took her hand, the one that wasn't holding bandages. "I see you, Kira, not as an Asharan, not as a political arrangement, just as you. And I think you're amazing." Kira felt something break open inside her. All the fear, all the walls she had built around her heart, they crumbled. She looked at this human man, this soldier who carried so much pain and guilt, who still chose kindness every single day. This man who had shown her what real strength looked like. "I think I'm falling in love with you," Kira whispered. Jake's eyes widened. "You are?" "I didn't want to. I fought against it, but yes, I am." "Good," Jake said, his smile growing. "Because I'm already there. I've been in love with you for weeks. I just didn't know if you'd ever feel the same way." Kira laughed through her tears. "We're quite a pair, aren't we? An Asharan who was terrified of humans and a human who thought he was too broken to deserve love. Maybe we're exactly what each other needs." Kira leaned forward carefully, mindful of his injuries. She pressed her forehead against his in the traditional Asharan gesture of affection and trust. Jake held very still, seeming to understand the importance of the moment. "Thank you," Kira whispered. "For what?" "For showing me that kindness is real, that humans can be gentle, that I was wrong to judge you before I knew you. Thank you for giving me a chance, for seeing past what I was and seeing who I'm trying to be." They stayed like that for a long time, foreheads pressed together, hands clasped. Two people from different worlds who had found each other in the most unlikely way. Outside, the station crew worked to repair the hull breach. Inside, something much more important was being built. Trust, understanding, love. Later, as Jake rested on the couch, his injuries bandaged and his exhaustion finally catching up with him, Kira sat beside him. She started to hum softly. Then the humming became words. She was singing, her voice clear and beautiful, filling their apartment with a song from her homeworld. Jake opened his eyes and listened. Tears traced down his cheeks. When she finished, he whispered, "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. I wanted to share it with you. Songs are sacred to my people. We only sing them for those we love. I love you too, Kira." She curled up next to him, careful not to touch his burns, and they fell asleep together. For the first time since their forced marriage began, both of them slept peacefully. No nightmares. No fear, just peace. The next few weeks were the happiest of Kira's life. She and Jake fell into a comfortable rhythm. They woke together, ate breakfast while talking about their dreams, shared stories from their different worlds, and fell asleep in each other's arms. Jake's injuries healed, leaving faint scars that Kira traced with her fingers while they lay together in the evenings. They explored the station together. Jake showed Kira the engineering bays where he worked. She watched him explain complex systems to younger engineers, saw the respect others had for him. Kira took Jake to the garden biodome, a massive greenhouse filled with plants from dozens of worlds. They walked hand in hand under alien trees, and Jake picked a flower that reminded him of the ones Kira had described from her homeworld. "It's not the same," he said, tucking it behind her ear. "But until I can take you home to see the real ones, this will have to do. You want to visit my world? I want to see everything that made you who you are." Kira kissed him then, surrounded by strange plants under artificial stars. She had never imagined she could feel this way about anyone, let alone a human, but Jake had proven that love didn't follow the rules people tried to give it. Love simply was. One evening, Jake taught Kira about Earth music. He played songs from different eras and cultures, watching her reactions. She loved a style called jazz, with its flowing melodies and complex rhythms. Jake found recordings of old jazz singers and played them while they cooked dinner together. Kira taught Jake about Asheran philosophy. She explained how her people believed that all beings were connected through emotional energy, that every action sent ripples through the universe. Jake listened carefully, asking questions, trying to understand. "So when I help someone, that creates positive energy that spreads?" "Yes, and when you hurt someone, that hurt spreads too. That's why kindness is so important to us. It's not just about being nice. It's about creating the kind of universe we want to live in." Jake was quiet for a moment. "I've created a lot of negative energy then. During the war," Kira took his hand. "You can't undo the past, but you can create positive energy now. Every day you choose kindness. You help people. You save children from burning buildings. That matters, Jake. That ripples out into the universe too. You really believe that?" "I know it. I can feel it." Jake pulled her close. "Then I'll keep trying for you, for everyone." But their happiness existed in a bubble, and bubbles always burst. The Coalition Council was preparing for a major vote on whether to renew Earth's membership. Anti-human factions had been growing stronger, using propaganda to turn other species against humanity. They called humans dangerous, unstable, too violent for civilized society. Jake and Kira tried to ignore the politics. They focused on their life together, on building something real and good. But the outside world wouldn't let them hide forever. Ambassador Torin arrived at the station on a cold morning. He requested a meeting with Kira and Jake in their apartment. When he arrived, his skin patterns showed worry and stress. "Father," Kira said, hugging him. "What's wrong?" Torin looked at Jake, then back at his daughter. "The council is divided. The vote is next month. Earth's continued membership hangs in the balance. What does that have to do with us?" Jake asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Everything," Torin said heavily. He sat down, suddenly looking very old. "The marriage program was designed to show unity between species. You two are the most visible couple. The other marriages, some have failed. Some were never real to begin with. But you two," he gestured between them, "people are watching you. How your marriage goes will influence how the council votes." Kira felt cold. "So we're still political tools. I'm sorry, daughter. I wish it wasn't this way, but yes. If your marriage appears successful, it helps Earth's case. If it fails, then Earth gets expelled from the coalition, Jake finished, and loses all the protection and resources that come with membership. Millions of humans live on colony worlds that depend on coalition support, Torrin said. Without that support, many of those colonies would fail. People would die. The weight of this settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Kira looked at Jake, he looked back at her. They both understood what was at stake now. But there's something else, Torrin continued. His expression grew darker. A radical group called the Purity Front has been making threats. They're opposed to any mixing of species. They see the marriage program as an abomination, and you two, being so visible, have become their primary target. What kind of threats? Jake's voice took on a hard edge that Kira rarely heard. Death threats. They want to kill you both during the Unity celebration next month. They believe your deaths will prove that different species cannot coexist. It will give them the evidence they need to push for Earth's expulsion. Kira felt Jake's hand find hers and squeeze gently. Security? He asked. Will be increased. But the Purity Front has members across multiple species. Some may have access to areas that should be secure. We can't guarantee your safety. We could refuse to attend, Kira suggested. Stay here where it's safer. You could, Torrin agreed. And I would understand that choice, but... He paused, choosing his words carefully. The Unity celebration is when the Council will make their final decision about Earth. Your presence there, standing together, would be a powerful statement. It might be the thing that tips the vote in humanity's favor. So we risk our lives to save Earth's membership, Jake said flatly. I know it's not fair. I know you didn't ask for any of this. Torrin looked at his daughter. Kira, I can get you out of this. I can request an annulment based on safety concerns. You don't have to stay in this marriage. You don't have to risk your life. Kira felt Jake's hand tighten on hers. She knew he would support whatever choice she made. If she wanted to leave, he wouldn't stop her. He loved her enough to let her go. But Kira thought about the past weeks. She thought about Jake's kindness, his gentle hands, his patient way of teaching her about Earth. She thought about how he had shown her that everything she believed about humans was wrong. She thought about how he risked himself to save an Asharan child without hesitation. She thought about the future they could have together if they survived this. No, Kira said firmly. I'm not leaving. This isn't a forced marriage anymore, Father. I love Jake, I choose to stay with him. And if our relationship can help save millions of lives, then we have a responsibility to try. Torrin's eyes filled with tears. You're sure? I'm sure. Jake turned to her. Kira, you don't have to do this for me. I'm not doing it just for you. I'm doing it for us. For what we represent. For the idea that different species can love each other. Can build something beautiful together. She cupped his face in her hands. I'm doing this because it's right. Jake pulled her into his arms. I don't deserve you. Yes, you do. You deserve happiness. You deserve love. You deserve a future. Torrin watched them, his expression complex. Finally, he stood. Then you'll attend the celebration? Yes, they said together. I'll make sure security is as tight as possible. But please, both of you, be careful. The Purity Front is dangerous. They've already attempted attacks on other interspecies couples. After Torrin left, Jake and Kira stood together at the window, looking out at the stars. Neither spoke for a long time. We might die, Jake finally said. We might. Are you scared? Terrified. But also, Kira paused, searching for the right words, also certain. This is what we're meant to do. Show people that love is stronger than hate. That understanding can bridge any divide. Jake kissed the top of her head. When did you become so brave? When I met a human who showed me what courage really looks like. You face your fears every day, Jake. You carry your pain and still choose kindness. If you can do that, I can be brave too. The next weeks were tense. Security personnel interviewed them about potential threats. They planned their route to the celebration, identified exits, discussed protocols. Jake taught Kira basic self-defense, though he hated doing it. She learned how to fall safely, how to protect her vital areas, how to run effectively in a crisis. But they also made time for happiness. They cooked elaborate meals together. They danced in their living room to earth jazz. They made plans for the future, for the life they would have if they survived. Jake wanted to take Kira to Earth, to show her the oceans and mountains. Kira wanted to bring Jake to her homeworld, to introduce him to her family, to walk with him through the crystal gardens. We'll do all of it, Jake promised. We'll see everything together. Every world, every wonder. I'll spend my whole life exploring the universe with you. Promise me something else, Kira said one night as they lay in bed. Anything. If something happens at the celebration, if someone tries to hurt us, promise me you won't sacrifice yourself for me. Jake was quiet. Jake, promise me. I know how you think. I know you'd throw yourself in front of danger to protect me, but I need you to promise that we face it together. No sacrifices. We both fight. We both survive. Or neither of us does. Kira, I can't promise that. If someone threatens you, I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe. And what about keeping yourself safe? Your life matters too, Jake, not just mine. You matter more. No. Kira sat up, her skin patterns glowing bright with intensity. We matter the same. Your life has the same value as mine. Promise me, Jake. Promise me we survive together or not at all. Jake looked at her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Together? I promise. Kira lay back down, curling into his arms. Together, she repeated. The night before the celebration, neither of them could sleep. They talked until dawn, sharing fears and hopes. Jake told her about his dreams, about the model ships he wanted to build, about the children he hoped they might have someday. Kira told him about her plans to open a cultural center, a place where different species could learn about each other, where understanding could replace fear. We'll build it together, Jake said. After the celebration, after we prove that love is stronger than hate, we'll build a place where others can find what we found. Hope, more than hope. Proof. Proof that the universe is bigger and better than the small, scared people who want to divide it. As the artificial dawn broke over Harmony Point Station, Kira and Jake dressed in their formal clothes. Kira wore traditional Asherin robes in deep blue. Jake wore a suit from Earth. They looked at each other, and without words they understood. This was it, the moment that would define not just their lives, but potentially the future of humanity and the Coalition. Ready? Jake asked, offering his hand. Kira took it. Her skin patterns glowed steady and bright. Ready? Together they walked toward the door. Toward the celebration. Toward whatever waited for them there. They walked as partners, as lovers, as proof that different worlds could come together and create something beautiful. They walked toward hope. The central plaza of Harmony Point had been transformed for the Unity celebration. Banners from all 15 Coalition species hung from the high ceiling. Lights floated through the air like stars. Thousands of beings filled the space, their voices creating a symphony of different languages and sounds. Security personnel stood at every entrance, their expressions alert. Kira felt Jake's hand tighten on hers as they entered. She could sense his tension, the soldier in him scanning for threats even as he smiled and nodded at the people they passed. Her own empathic abilities were nearly overwhelmed by the emotions of the crowd, excitement, joy, hope. But also, somewhere in the mix, pockets of anger and hatred that made her skin prickle with warning. I feel them, Kira whispered to Jake. People who don't want us here. I know. Just stay close to me. They made their way through the crowd toward the stage where they would speak. Other interspecies couples were there too, looking nervous but determined. Ambassador Torin waited near the stage, flanked by security guards. When he saw Kira and Jake, relief flooded his face. I'm glad you came, Torin said. We gave our word, Kira replied. The celebration began with music and speeches from council members. Each one spoke about unity and the importance of different species working together. But Kira could hear the uncertainty in some voices. The vote later tonight would be close. Earth's future in the Coalition balanced on a knife's edge. Finally, it was time for the interspecies couples to speak. 3 couples went before Jake and Kira. Each told their story of finding love across species barriers. The crowd applauded politely, but Kira could sense skepticism from some listeners. These marriages still felt like political arrangements to many, not real relationships. Then it was their turn. Jake and Kira walked onto the stage together. The lights were bright. Cameras floated everywhere, broadcasting to all Coalition worlds. Kira's heart pounded so hard she thought everyone must be able to hear it. Jake squeezed her hand once, gently, then stepped forward to the microphone. His voice was steady as he began to speak. My name is Jake Morrison. I'm a human, an engineer, and a former soldier. A few months ago, I was told I would marry someone I'd never met. An Asherin woman who had every reason to hate me, To hate all humans, he paused. I went into this marriage expecting nothing. Just duty, just obligation. But I was wrong. He turned to look at Kira. Kira taught me that I was wrong about many things. Wrong about what I deserved. Wrong about my own worth. Wrong about the possibility of happiness after everything I'd done in the war. The crowd was silent now, listening. Kira could feel their attention shift from polite interest to genuine curiosity. I carry guilt for my actions during the war. Jake continued. I always will. People died because of decisions I made. Good people. Innocent people. For a long time, I believed that guilt meant I didn't deserve love or peace. But Kira showed me something important. She showed me that humans are capable of incredible compassion and gentleness, even after we've been hurt, even after we've hurt others. He reached out his hand to Kira. She took it and stepped forward to join him at the microphone. I'm Kira Velshar, she said, her voice clear despite her nervousness. I was terrified when I learned I would marry a human. I'd been told stories my whole life about how violent your species was. How dangerous, how incapable of true feeling. She looked out at the crowd. I believed those stories. When I met Jake, all I could see was a soldier. A killer, a monster. I spent the first weeks of our marriage hiding from him, waiting for him to hurt me. Kira's skin patterns began to glow brighter, showing her emotional intensity. But Jake never hurt me. He showed me kindness when he had no reason to. He respected my space. He left me small gifts. He made me feel safe. And slowly I began to see the truth. Humans aren't monsters. They're people just like all of us. People who feel pain and joy. People who make mistakes and try to do better. People capable of great love. Her voice grew stronger. I learned that real strength isn't about violence or power. Real strength is choosing kindness when you've been hurt. Real strength is building when you've only known destruction. Jake shows me that strength every single day. Jake spoke again. Kira taught me about Asherin philosophy, about how every action creates ripples in the universe, how kindness spreads just like hurt does. She taught me that I can't undo my past, but I can create positive energy now. I can choose to be better than I was. And Jake taught me about courage, Kira added, about facing your fears even when they terrify you, about vulnerability and trust, about how love can grow in the most unlikely places. They looked at each other and Kira felt tears forming in her eyes. We didn't choose this marriage at first. It was forced on both of us. But somewhere along the way, we chose each other. We chose to see past our prejudices. We chose to build something beautiful together. Jake's voice was thick with emotion. Our marriage isn't perfect. We're still learning about each other's cultures. We still make mistakes, but that's what makes it real. That's what makes it strong. We work through our differences. We communicate. We choose each other every single day. Some people say different species can't truly love each other, Kira said, addressing the skeptics directly. They say we're too different. That there's no common ground. But they're wrong. Love is love regardless of what world you come from. Pain is pain. Joy is joy. Hope is hope. These things are universal. She turned to face the crowd fully. I know there are people here who don't want humans in the coalition. People who see Jake's species as dangerous and violent. People who would use our marriage as proof that integration doesn't work. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Security personnel tensed, scanning for threats. But I ask you to look at us, Kira continued. Really look at us. We're not special. We're just two people who chose understanding over fear, who chose love over hate. If we can bridge the divide between our species, anyone can. That's what the coalition is supposed to be about. Not just tolerating differences, but celebrating them, learning from them, growing because of them. Jake stepped forward again. Humanity has a lot to learn from the other coalition species. We're young, we're aggressive, we make mistakes, but we're also adaptable. We're capable of change. We want to be better. We want to contribute to something larger than ourselves. He looked directly into the nearest camera. To those who think humans don't belong in the coalition, I understand your concerns. We've given you reasons to doubt us. But I promise you this, we're worth the chance. We'll keep trying. We'll keep learning. We'll keep proving that we can be partners, not threats. Kira felt movement in the crowd. Her empathic sense suddenly screamed a warning. She turned to see figures pushing forward, their emotions blazing with hatred and purpose. The Purity Front. Jake! She shouted. Everything happened very fast. Security moved to intercept the attackers, but one had gotten too close. A figure in a dark cloak raised something that looked like a weapon. Kira saw it point toward Jake. Every instinct screamed at her to duck, to run, to save herself. But she had made Jake promise they would face danger together. She stepped in front of him instead. Before the attacker could fire, something unexpected happened. An Asherin woman from the crowd threw herself at the attacker, knocking the weapon aside. Then a human man joined her, helping to restrain the would-be killer. Then another person, and another. Different species working together, protecting Jake and Kira. More Purity Front members revealed themselves in the crowd, but each time ordinary citizens stopped them. Not security, not trained soldiers, just regular people who had been watching Jake and Kira's story unfold over the past months. People who had been moved by what they saw. Within minutes, all the attackers were subdued. Security took them away. No one had been seriously injured. The crowd, shocked at first, began to understand what had just happened. They had witnessed spontaneous unity in the face of hatred, different peoples, different species, all standing together. The crowd erupted in cheers, not polite applause this time, but genuine thunderous approval. The noise was deafening. Kira felt tears streaming down her face. Jake wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight. "You stepped in front of me," he said, his voice shaking. "You promised we'd face it together. Together doesn't mean next to each other. It means protecting each other, always." Ambassador Torin ran onto the stage. "Are you both all right?" "We're fine," Jake said. "Thanks to them." He gestured to the crowd, to all the ordinary people who had become heroes in a moment of crisis. The celebration continued, but it had transformed into something more powerful than anyone had planned. Images of the different species protecting Jake and Kira spread across coalition networks within minutes. The video showed clear evidence of what unity could accomplish. It showed that the ideals of the coalition weren't just political talk, but something people truly believed in. That night, the council voted. Kira and Jake waited in their apartment, holding each other, not knowing which way the decision would go. Finally, Ambassador Torin called with the news. "Earth's membership has been renewed," he said. His voice was full of joy. "Not just renewed, expanded. The council has voted to invest more resources in cultural exchange programs. They're making the interspecies marriage program voluntary and expanding it, and..." He paused. "They want to appoint you and Jake as ambassadors. Not through politics, but through the example you've set." Kira and Jake looked at each other. "We'll think about it," Kira said. "Right now, we just want to be together." The months that followed were busy. The attempted attack on the celebration had horrified most coalition citizens. Support for interspecies unity grew stronger. The Purity Front lost members and influence. More and more species began working together on projects that benefited everyone. Jake and Kira eventually accepted the ambassador positions, but on their own terms. They didn't give political speeches or attend endless formal meetings. Instead, they did what came naturally to them. They taught. They shared their story. They helped other interspecies couples navigate the challenges of their relationships. They built bridges between communities that had never spoken to each other before. 2 years after their forced wedding, Jake and Kira stood together in a new building on Harmony Point. The cultural center they had dreamed about was finally finished. It had rooms for art from different worlds, spaces for music and dance, libraries filled with texts in dozens of languages, gardens where plants from various planets grew side by side. But most importantly, it had a common area where beings from different species could simply talk to each other, share meals, tell stories, learn that under all their differences they had more in common than they knew. "We did it," Kira said, looking around at their creation. Her skin patterns glowed with happiness. "We built something beautiful." Jake wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You built something beautiful. I just helped know we did this together. Everything we've done together." The center's doors opened and the first visitors began arriving. Children of different species ran through the gardens together, their laughter universal. Adults browsed the libraries, discovering new worlds through books. Musicians from various cultures prepared for a joint performance that evening. An elderly Asharan woman approached Jake and Kira. "Thank you," she said simply. "My granddaughter was the child you saved from the hull breach, Jake. She talks about you all the time, says she wants to be an engineer like you when she grows up." Jake's eyes filled with tears. "I'd be honored to teach her someday," the woman smiled. I was one of the people who protested against human membership in the coalition. I thought your species was too dangerous. But you changed my mind, both of you. You showed me that courage isn't about fighting. It's about opening your heart even when you're afraid. After she left, Kira leaned into Jake. Do you ever regret it? Being forced into this marriage, Jake thought for a moment. I regret that we were forced. That choice was taken from us. But I don't regret where we ended up. If someone had told me on our wedding day that I'd be this happy, I wouldn't have believed them. I was so scared of you that day, I know. I could see it in your eyes. It hurt seeing that fear. Knowing I was the cause of it, Kira turned in his arms to face him. You made me believe in second chances. You showed me that people can change. That kindness is the bravest choice anyone can make. You made me believe I deserved to be happy, that I wasn't just my worst mistakes, that I could build something good with these hands that had caused so much harm. They kissed, gentle and loving. Around them, the cultural center buzzed with life and hope, different species learning from each other, children playing together without prejudice, adults discovering that their similarities outweighed their differences. What should we do next? Kira asked. Jake smiled. Whatever we want. We've done our duty. We've proven what needed proving. Now we can just live. Just be happy. Just love each other. That sounds perfect. They walked through the center hand in hand, stopping to talk with visitors, to watch the children play, to enjoy the music that filled the air. They had started as two people forced together by politics. They had become two hearts beating as one. They had shown the universe that love could bridge any divide, overcome any obstacle, heal any wound. That night, they stood on their apartment balcony looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere was the Asherine homeworld. Somewhere were all the colonies and stations and ships that made up the coalition. All those different places, all those different peoples connected by the choice to work together instead of apart. I love you, Jake said. I love you too. Kira replied. Where do you want to go first? Earth or your homeworld? Both, all of it. I want to see everything with you. Jake pulled her close. Then that's what we'll do. We'll explore the whole universe together. Two hearts, one journey. Kira's skin patterns glowed softly in the darkness, a beacon of joy and love. One future, Jake agreed. They stood together under the stars, proof that understanding could bridge any divide, that kindness could overcome any hatred, that love could grow in the most unlikely places. They were no longer a forced marriage. They were partners. They were lovers. They were proof of what the coalition could be at its best. They were proof that choosing to see someone as they truly are, rather than what you've been told they are, can change everything. They were proof that real strength comes from vulnerability, that real courage comes from opening your heart even when you're afraid, that real love comes from choosing each other. Every single day, despite every obstacle, they were Jake and Kira. Two people from different worlds who found each other and built some